You're not selling products. No brand on the planet sells products. Products is what they buy, but that's not what you're selling. And now we're starting to find that nothing is working. And brands are starting to feel the pain from that. So they just kind of make up a USP, or like they make up a position. And I have to very gently say, that's not how that works. That's not how that works. This is why I find language analysis really interesting for brands in particular, because it could tell you a lot about, not just about what people feel about your brand, but also how people feel about the purchasing experience on different platforms that your brand lives on. It's very important, like congruency between your ad and your landing page, but I don't see congruency of core message almost ever. Well, in marketing, everybody talks about strategy, but I'm noticing that I don't think anybody really knows what that means. Oh no.
Hey everyone, welcome to Two Ecomm Experts. I'm Viktor, the host and the founder of Markademics. I'm excited because we have a creative expert finally on the Two Ecomm Experts podcast, Sarah Levinger. You've probably seen her in AdWorld, you've probably seen her in Forbes. If you still haven't, then you absolutely should. A person that really understands creatives, understands branding, understands strategy, understands creative production, and these will be topics that we'll cover today, because right now everyone's talking about creatives and how important they are. And if everyone's talking about it, then most of the people have no idea how to actually perform it. So Sarah, thank you for being part of Two Ecomm Experts, and I'll be very glad to have this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. That was a great intro. I think there's a lot going on in creativity right now, especially in D2C. And so this is going to be kind of a pivotal time for the brands to get this. Pretty important to get creative right now, because what's about to happen is going to be, I think, kind of massive, especially for acquisitions. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Before we get into questions and like the whole conversation, I have one little thing that I wanted to ask you first.
Yeah. Can
we have the most honest, direct conversation about creatives ever, and be as sharp as we can be, as direct as we can be, so that we can help e-com store owners really boost up their game? Because I feel like there's a lot of political correctness in the way that we're delivering messages in our marketing world.
I would tend to agree with that. I think the majority of our society is very, very careful about how we say things to each other, which I think is in general a good thing, that we're careful about being a little bit more politically correct sometimes. However, when it comes to learning, I think honesty is probably the best way to go. We got to make sure that we're kind of distilling a little bit down from what sounds like a good idea and what is a good idea. So yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, let's get into it. It's 2024. Yep. Brands are going crazy about creatives. Brands are also getting crazy about the whole situation around the world, and that the consumer behavior is changing. So walk me through. What is happening in your opinion right now in terms of the creatives, and what is the biggest mistakes that you're seeing that brands are doing right now?
Yeah. Oh, this is a good one to start with. So the creative is changing quite a lot, which I think is pretty... it's on everybody's radar that like creative doesn't work the same way that it used to. So a couple years ago when we were riding up this kind of like UGC wave and everybody started kind of hopping on video, in particular video, what I would call just like storytelling, everybody was kind of seeing really good results from these videos that were very sales focused, very direct response. And it was funny because while we kind of rode that wave up, we also started to see creative strategists come into the industry pretty quickly, pretty heavily. So everybody had a need for somebody who understood how to look at metrics and also take creative and basically pair them together. We're seeing now that a lot of the innovation that used to happen around creative has kind of died a little bit. Like we're slowly starting to just settle, right? The dust is settling from all of that creative activity that we had for about 2 to 3 years. And now we're starting to find that nothing is working. And brands are starting to feel the pain from that. So it's an interesting time to be in D2C. It's even more interesting to be in paid, especially for these types of brands that are struggling a little bit to decide, should we bring paid in-house? Should we do all of our creatives in with our teams? Or should we give them to the agencies? Should the agencies do them? There's a lot. There's some turmoil going on.
I feel like everyone is like pretty confused in regards to that
Yeah.
because everything that you mentioned. So you said that nothing is working. Why is nothing working right now? Why are we facing this issue?
Oh, it's a great question. Unfortunately for us, the only innovation that comes into the creative realm comes from the marketers that are currently in D2C.
Yeah.
Even the bigger brands, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, like those guys, they follow what the D2C industry does, which I find really interesting. But because of that, we have to have people in the industry whose only job is to innovate. So we have a few of these brands who are very big on testing, experimenting, injecting emotion, understanding storytelling, but they're few and far between. Mostly because you have to be a very specific size of brand to be able to employ the amount of people it takes to be creative. And that's so hard for these littler brands. I don't say little, but like brands who are currently in the scale mode. To innovate while they're just trying to stay afloat. So what we really need at this point is innovators. We are lacking in innovation, and that's the reason why nothing is working, is because we keep trying the same concepts over and over and over. Same concept, just different package usually. So I truly believe it's just we're running out of creative is what we're doing. We're running out of creativity.
That's quite interesting. And what are the actually? So when we are flooding the market with the same stuff, 5 reasons why, X reasons why,
Yeah.
TikTok trends, etc., that all of us are doing, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's working perfectly, sometimes it's not at all. I'm asking myself the question: what do the consumers actually want? So
Yeah.
what are they expecting right now?
Smart.
And how do I capture the attention of the consumer right now so that they can actually trust me, even though all of the brands that they're seeing are saying 5 reasons why?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's a good question that every brand I think should be asking themselves. And this is a difficult one. This is a difficult one to keep tabs on as an agency or as a brand, unless you have somebody whose only job is to keep track of what the consumers are doing. My only job is to be a consultant and to come into the brands and kind of describe the lay of the landscape psychologically from a consumer standpoint. So all I do all day long is keep tabs on what society is doing. You really cannot like disconnect behavior from emotion, right? So for a lot of our consumers these days, especially if you're an older consumer, so you're in that like boomer on upwards crowd, there is a ton of political unrest happening and a lot of emotional unrest happening. And for that particular group, they buy products and they shop and they look for solutions to their problems based upon how they're feeling about the economic landscape. They're a little bit more connected to it than the younger generations are. Now, that doesn't mean the younger generations aren't educated. It just means they value something very differently. The millennials, the Gen Zers, and as an old millennial raising a Gen Alpha, like I'm teaching my kids a very different message about what success looks like and how to live a good life. So we value very, very different things than the boomers do. So I think it's really important as a brand, if you're going to try and sell people products, you have to understand what they're emotionally feeling about their entire life, which is difficult. I don't say that lightly. It's very difficult to keep track of that. But if you can immerse yourself into a generation of people, you're going to find it a lot easier to sell because you'll be able to speak the language that they're speaking and connect your products and brand to the life that they're currently living.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So you are a consultant, you work with different brands, you're seeing the whole landscape. It's always nice to have this outside view of what's going on, so that you can make rational decisions.
Yeah.
When you start working with a client, what's the first things that you are looking at?
Usually when I start with clients, I always have to start at like the core of the brand. So this is actually new for me, honestly. For a long time, I was just helping with acquisitions. So the only thing I was brought in to do was help people understand why their ads weren't working. And over time, as I started to work with all these brands, I noticed that almost every single one had the same exact issue. Didn't matter the industry they were in or the vertical or the product that they sold. They all have the same exact issue, which is we don't really understand why people purchase. So I think it's right now I'm currently working with brands to understand how to create a psychological position in the market. Because the brands that are currently able to do this, good example, Liquid Death, right? They were able to create a psychological benefit for their product that's literally just water in a can. But because they were able to do that, they are just blowing up. Like they're growing so fast. And it's really going to help them in the long run because they will get competitors. And as soon as those competitors come into the market, they won't be able to compete really because psychological value is what creates a brand these days.
Okay, so you go inside, and what do you start tearing apart outside of, what's your positioning on the market and what's your actual proposition to the customer base?
Yeah.
What do you do in terms of process with those people?
My job is usually to look at the language of how customers are actually, like reviewing the products and the brand itself. So I do a lot of research. I am constantly on all these different platforms all day long. And I'm double checking and basically validating the language that the customer uses inside the brand ecosystem, which is usually reviews, with the language they're using outside of it. So I will check things like Reddit. Reddit is one of the best places you can possibly go to understand human behavior and understand community-based languages, right? So how people say something can drastically change what they mean. So oftentimes I will have to work with these brands and
Can you give an
help
example
them.
with this? That's
yes.
quite interesting because nobody's talking about Reddit in that much.
Yeah.
So you go on Reddit, you do your research. Can you give us an example of a situation like that?
Yes. So one of the best ones I actually had a brand that I worked with that basically had no reviews at all. They were like brand new, so I couldn't do a whole lot of like linguistic research with the reviews. So we went to Reddit because that was one of the best places that you could go to find lots and lots of content around their specific product. So when you go to Reddit, there's a couple different things you can do. There's lots of different like Reddit threads that you can check on specific industries. I like to go in and just type in whatever the product is. So, collagen supplement or I don't know, Nike shoes, whatever it is. And then just start reading. And the more you read, the more of a sense you'll start to get of how people are currently feeling about that particular product because they'll use very feeling type words, right? I was frustrated. I was excited. I was disappointed. Like you'll start to notice these emotional words. And once those come into play, then it's pretty easy for you to take that outside of Reddit and start using it in your acquisition. It's just a tool to get kind of a broader look at what the whole entire industry is kind of riding off of, which is consumer insight. So, yeah.
So you go on Reddit, you search for the product or the niche in general, you look at the comments, you take the emotional responses of the people that are getting the most traction and what they're mostly feeling about. You label them as objections or like as triggers, and then you start making content that's answering those triggers. Is that the basic? So you can use it that way.
Yeah, you could absolutely use it as basically just an angle generator. But most of the time, I will actually copy and paste all these different like Reddit threads, comments, as long as they're pretty long form. I like to see long like paragraphs of stories. If it's just a piece that says, I love this product, that doesn't help me literally at all. So the longer the story, the better. But then I'll copy and paste it into an Excel spreadsheet. And this is the same work that I do with reviews. So usually I'll take this system and apply it to reviews if I have them. But if I can't, I'll go to Reddit and do the same thing. Copy, paste them into a spreadsheet. And then what I'm trying to do is basically categorize these into different emotions. And I'm doing that mostly so that I can help the brand understand, here's the core reasons emotionally why people buy from you. So if you can identify an emotion behind your brand, it's a whole lot easier to situate your brand so it has a good position in the market without having to make it up. Because most brands come in and say, they just kind of make up a USP or like they make up a position. And I have to very gently say, that's not how that works. That's not how that works. So anyways, usually when I come in here I do this kind of like linguistic analysis, I'll throw it into chat because chat's one of the easiest places to get like, real-time reviews. I also have like a more robust tool that actually uses like a little bit of language modeling and linguistic responses. So there's a company that I work with that helps a lot of these brands do this type of research where they will track to see what kind of response from the brain customers have when they get fed different marketing messages. It's fascinating stuff. Like, you can get real deep into the science here, and it's so interesting. But doing this kind of helps brands understand there's a large portion of your success that's built on what you say and how you say it. Very, very important. So yeah, a lot of what I do is just language analysis. And Reddit's
what have you seen is like the main difference, and how do you go about reviews and how do you go about Reddit comments? Because they're drastically different in terms of the positivity.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you look at them, and what do you take from the reviews? What do you take from Reddit?
I have done basically like side-by-side analysis, A/B analysis with these type of things, and it's really interesting. The reviews will often have this very similar, I guess, primary and secondary emotions come out as Amazon does. But the third, like the third or fourth emotions that come out are very different. So depending on the platform that you pull this data from, you're going to get a very different.
Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah. So I just recently did this for a brand actually this week. So when I run these reports, I call them NLP reports. So they're natural language processing, right? So when I run an NLP report, usually the brands come with just website reviews. This brand really wanted to do website versus their Amazon reviews just to see the difference. The top two emotions that came out were esteem and competence. So these are the emotions their customers are actually looking to solve within themselves while they purchase. Mm-hmm. So customers really wanted to feel cool and they really wanted to feel smart. Now, they matched side to side from the website to Amazon. But the third one changed between the website and Amazon. So the third emotion that came up for this brand was belonging on the website. But on Amazon, it was security, which makes perfect sense.
These are quite different.
Yeah. And this is why I find language analysis really interesting for brands in particular, because it could tell you a lot about not just about what people feel about your brand, but also how people feel about the purchasing experience on different platforms that your brand lives on. So you're going to get a very different emotion coming in for your brand reviews, mostly because people like you. And they want to give you a review that's good usually, right? That's why they're reviewing. Even if it's a negative review, often they will turn down that negative emotion a lot. On Amazon, it's very different. Reviews are very candid on Amazon. So you get different emotions coming out. I like to see matching as much as possible just because it helps me understand, okay, on the website, it's this, and on Amazon, it's this. So we have a good basis, good foundation that this is accurate. If it's drastically different, that would warrant more research.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. Like, what do you do when there's a big discrepancy between what you're seeing, for example, on Amazon and what you're seeing on the website, or what you're seeing, let's say, on Trustpilot and what you're seeing on Reddit?
If I see reviews come in and we do the analysis on different platforms and it's all over the place, this tells me one of two things. One, we're either getting a very odd data set in and we've analyzed it a little incorrectly, or two, it's very possible that the brand is sending different messages to different platforms and the consistency or the coherence of the brand has been damaged, right? So they're saying something different on TikTok than they are on Twitter or LinkedIn or Amazon, and it's causing different types of customers to come in and leave different types of reviews. I know that we've talked about this a lot in marketing, that it's very important, like congruency between your ad and your landing page, but I don't see congruency of core message almost ever. I see congruency of visual design, and that's about it. Congruency of core message is way more important.
And as a brand owner myself, I would say that, you do what works for you. So basically, you check the ROAS. If that's an ad that's running okay, then you're scaling it. But then there's your creative strategist that has 55 new ideas that have nothing to do with your winner that's been there for a year. Yeah. And you cannot replicate that winner for a reason. And so on and so forth, and you start being like three brands in one in terms of messaging, and then
happens all the time.
It's becoming shit.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and you get to the point too where it's very, very difficult for you to figure out as a founder, who the hell is this brand? Like, who the hell are we? We have no idea. We're just selling product, and this is like the biggest issue I see with brands nowadays is they don't know who they are. Mm-hmm. Brands like Liquid Death got to be one of the biggest water distribution companies in the world because they knew exactly who they were from day one, and they never, ever deviated from it. The more consistent you can be with your message, the more believable it is. You have to stay consistent no matter what. Now, some of this comes down to understanding that you're not selling products. No brand on the planet sells products. Products is what they buy, but that's not what you're selling, right? So Liquid Death doesn't sell water in a can. They sell rebellion because they're selling to misfits, right? They're selling to people who are misunderstood. And as a misunderstood person, it benefits you to feel rebellious, to say, I'm going to stick it to the man. I'm not going to just like blend. I'm different, right? I'm different is what they wanted to hear. And Liquid Death was able to say it in a way that was like, yes, 100%. And that's why they grew so fast. So, and now you see they have these ads that have horrible reviews on them, and they've put a sticker on there that's or like a badge on there that says people love us on the internet. It's hilarious because they're kind of laughing about the fact that we're different and we don't care. So Liquid Death has figured out what they sell, which is rebellion, and they sold it in a can to people, and that is how you build a brand.
Amazing. And you were working with different brands, and I'm sure that you faced this issue. You're saying all those mixed reviews, etc., or like really bad messaging, and you just said that we need consistency. So, from working from a situation where the consistency was in the wrong direction, what do you do when you're like, okay, this is the wrong direction. I need to change the whole messaging. How do I start this without ruining the whole foundation that was already built?
Yes. Yeah. Good question. I've had a few brands that have come in and just said, our ads are stagnating, right? We're having a difficult time finding new winners. We just can't seem to hit the right angle anymore. It just died. Can you help us come in and basically figure out what's going on? So I usually take a look at their ads, take a look at what they're saying, and then I'll go in and take a look at what the consumers want, and then say, you guys are saying X, and it needs to actually be like X 2.0. So great example for this. I had a brand that was a makeup brand that came in, and they really wanted to push forward this message of confidence. It was all about like boost your confidence. This is the confidence girl, confidence, over and over and over. And I kept saying to the founder, like, okay, what kind of confidence do you want to convey? And they looked at me like I had two heads. They were just like, what are you talking about? And I was like, okay, here's the thing. Like, I know this is a little confusing, but in general, most emotions that we use in a marketing sense are core emotions, but there's 17 different levels beneath that we haven't even explored yet. So confidence can go in lots of different ways. It can be cheeky, right? Or it can also be like boss babe. Okay. Those are two different types of they're still confidence, but they're two totally different types of confidence. Cheeky means I'm going to start to produce ads where we're doing a lot of like pranks, and we do a lot of jokes, and we do a lot of like, humorous things. Boss babe, I'm going to go after these women with really high-end suits, lots of really interesting like flashy cars or really pretty offices. Like, it's a very different vibe. And if you can't decide which one you are, you're going to just float. You're just going to
So what did you do for the brand? So what did you change there?
Yeah. So for these guys, I came in and basically just told them, okay, look, we have to sit down on something. You have to decide who you're going to be and be that person from now on. So they decided they really wanted to go for this kind of like cheeky angle. And so then I was able to work with their creative team and teach them how viral content actually becomes viral, the psychology of like all these different video elements that you have to add in here. Specifically, like how to do this research to understand how many high intent purchasers do I have? How are we going to get these people in the door? Are they actually ready to purchase? Like, what do we need to say at each step of the funnel? There's tactics that you can add on to it, but I can't do tactics until we know who you are first.
Without strategy, basically, without having the positioning. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, I have a series on Instagram where I talk about Sun Tzu's from The Art of War. His basically lessons in how they do in the e-comm world. So one of it is that tactics without strategy is basically the noise before defeat.
Yeah. So exactly. Yes, you have to go into your strategy first, and I realize that not everybody has training on strategy, so it makes sense if you're struggling with it right now. But strategy.
To the conclusion that almost nobody has training on strategy, and that's nothing that teaches you there. Like,
because in marketing, everybody talks about strategy, but I'm noticing that I don't think anybody really knows what that means. Oh no.
Yeah, because strategy is being taken as tactic. So strategy is like,
Yes.
oh, I'm going to push these types of ads. That's not
Yeah.
a strategy. That's your
That's not a
tactic of
strategy.
how
Yeah.
to achieve a certain goal.
Exactly. Yeah. Our strategy needs to really come from the top down of who are we, which way do we want to go, and then how are we going to get there? Is it by bike? Is it by car? Are we walking? Are we like on a pogo stick? What are we going to use to get there? And then start. Go walk the path, right? But you can't do it until you know what the direction is. And
Yep.
that I think is the biggest piece that's missing. We can do tactics all day long, but unless you know where you're going, it doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You talked about viral videos and how important they are. I think that even in the paid world, yeah, just having viral elements are quite important. 2020 or 2022 viral videos are completely different from 2024
Yes.
viral
Yeah.
videos. So walk me through what's a 2024 guide for viral videos. What does it have inside?
Gosh, virality is a very interesting word, mostly because the majority of the people that I meet think virality means I got a lot of views. I saw a lot of people saw it, right? That's not technically virality, because if it was, then every single video that Mr. Beast produced would be a viral video, because the guy gets millions of views on every single video. Now, for his ecosystem, that's not viral. A 10 million view video is a Tuesday for him, right? So we cannot take viral and make it mean views. If we're going to talk viral, I want to talk about a couple different things. First would be, what exactly are you looking to get viral for, right? Do you need the views? If you do, fine. We'll optimize for virality and views. But most of the time, it's not views that these people want, it's sales. So I don't necessarily need it to be viral and just get shared a lot. I actually need it to be viral and get a lot of comments, a lot of engagement, a lot of clicks. It's a very big difference. And I mean, this is just personal belief of mine. I don't think there's any difference between paid and organic. I think it's the exact same thing. It's still just content at the end of the day. They have different purposes, that's for sure. And one of them basically just has a trust fund and the other one does not. It's the only difference between the two. Now, I know that marketers really want to make this separate. They want their paid pieces of creative to go viral in different ways than the organic does. But you can learn a lot by studying organic virality, because oftentimes the things that go viral in organic are relatable, shareable, and very, very specific. So one of the best examples I had of this is a guy that was a personal trainer that had a couple thousand followers on TikTok. And I wasn't following him, but I saw his stuff a lot because it was very similar to the ecosystem that I had set up on TikTok, which was all about working out, because I hate working out. So I was like, motivation. So anyways, I saw his videos a lot, and he had one video that he posted. I don't know if you've probably seen this guy. One video he posted where he talked about the fact that men don't specifically want young women who are beautiful and who are super fit. They actually just want a real woman, right? Who's been through some stuff, who maybe has some stretch marks, and maybe she's just real. We just want real women, right? That one piece of content grew his following to 2 million followers within a year. I mean, he was just followers after follow. I mean, the guy grew so incredibly fast. And now that's his entire personality. It's just that one video. Now, I have to say this, brands, it takes one piece of content for you to blow up like that in organic ecosystem. But it takes us thousands of pieces of content to blow up like that on paid. So when we're talking about virality, we have to know, what are we trying to go viral for? What's the point of being viral? Because there's lots of different ways to make it. But we can't do it without knowing, what are we actually optimizing for? Now, that guy wasn't optimizing to become a influencer. That just happened to him.
Yeah.
But
It was
yeah, his content was extremely relatable, right? It was very shareable from the women who had never heard this before. So he had lots of women just sharing it naturally. And then it was so specific, because he specifically talked about issues that his audience currently dealt with. Relatable, shareable, specific. It has to be that.
Okay, quite interesting. So if I'm a brand, I should be looking into, don't talk about the broad stuff, don't talk about what everyone is talking about.
Yeah.
Get something that's a painful maybe topic, or something that's bringing up quite a lot of emotion, or and you want to be okay, I need to share this. I want to show this to 5 people because they must know about this. It might be like a trick, it might be something, whatever. But 5 people need to know about this when you see this content. And if he says that, hey, men don't really like fit women, they like real women that have a brain and emotion and all of that.
Well, you notice, like, he was saying something that not a lot of people have said up until that point, right?
Or you don't really expect from a guy that is talking about
you do not
talking
expect
about
that. Yeah. Well, and I wish every brand understood how to do this, because the only reason that like my ecosystem grew as fast as it did is because I said something that was just slightly different than most consultants were saying, or most agencies, most brands have heard before, which is like, it's all about that psychology. You literally can't uncouple brand growth from the brain. You can't do it, right? And people were like, wow, yeah, that's like a good point. If you can get people to agree with you, you have a much better chance of getting them to buy something from you.
Yeah.
But to get them to agree, you have to state things in a way that's relatable. Like, it has to be almost like a very drastic change from something they've heard before.
Okay, something that I definitely wanted to ask you. Like, that's great in terms of any brand that's like solving major issues.
Yeah.
Solving major pain points. My brand is in entertainment. I'm selling products to Star Wars fans. I'm repping my Obi-Wan Kenobi shirt today. But when you're having something that you get most of the times for fun, it might be emotional fun, but it's still, you don't really solve any issues with this, or not quite exactly. How do you go with brands like that?
Okay, so I have 2 takes on this. The first one, I think you'd be surprised at how deep the emotions go for these types of products, especially in the entertainment industry. There are people who get so wrapped up in Star Wars, they can't think about anything else. It's like, I'm just trying to get off of work so that I can go and like, put together my next Star Wars Lego kit or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
There's some people that get so wrapped up in these stories that becomes their identity. So oftentimes you'll find for these products that are more utilitarian, right? And not, what we would call like highly emotional products, it's difficult, I think, for most brands to figure out how to sell that, because it's like, well, I can't use heavy emotions for t-shirts. To do that, like I said, there's 2 different ways that you can really do this. First one is you can attach it to a personality, which is what I would suggest most people do. Mostly because people buy from people, and it's very easy for you to get attached to somebody and buy whatever they sell to you. The second way to do this, though, is to produce something that they already enjoy consuming and then sell the product on the back end. Lots of brands have done this on television in particular. There's entire followings for Game of Thrones or like, Stranger Things, and they sold massive amounts of products on the back end, but before they even went into product sales, they just produced something that was great to consume. Okay. So personality or media company is basically your only 2 routes.
Okay, that's quite a good one. And I want to take you back a little bit, maybe 20 minutes ago.
Okay.
You mentioned something that I pointed out in my notes, and that was the role of the creative strategist, and how big creative strategists are right now in the e-comm world. Every brand is looking for one, and almost nobody is nailing this.
Yeah.
First of all, what's the purpose of a creative strategist? What should be the real purpose of a creative strategist? And what should the work of a creative strategist look like?
The original purpose for creative strategists was to help us generate ad ideas that would increase our metric goals for our ad accounts. It was really just somebody who was creative, who understood metrics. That was the original purpose. I'm seeing the definition of it change a little bit. Now a creative strategist is somebody who could basically take the overall brand personality and inject it everywhere, right? So they can kind of manage email and landing pages and paid acquisition and retention. They can literally do all of it and figure out how we need to inject our core message into everything. It's not just for paid anymore. The odd part is creative strategist is technically interchangeable with marketing director. It's what they kind of do in between each other. Similar roles, very similar position, very, very similar outputs that they're required to come up with. So I am stuck on creative strategists because this is one of the oddest behaviors I think I've ever seen in any industry, is that we have a role and we have a term for the role. Creative strategists, we know what we want them to do, but we have not been able to fill it. And it's been 4 years since, almost 5 years that we had iOS 14 had worked through everything, and we've seen so much change in the industry, and we consistently have this need for somebody who knows how to do this, and very, very few people to fill it, which is weird.
What are the traits of a good creative strategist? So if I'm a brand and I'm looking for one, what are the good traits of one?
First thing I'd say is curiosity. You really got to be very curious as a human to be a good creative strategist. You really need to ask why all the time. Like the best creative strategists I've ever seen are usually the type of people that just constantly ask, why is that happening? Why is that happening? Why is that happening? So curiosity is probably the first one. Obviously, you got to have some performance background. You need to either have come from media buying or understand media buying or want to know media buying. You need to have some sort of performance-based background so you know what the metrics mean, even though the metrics aren't that accurate anymore. And then probably last on that side, you really have to have a mind for content. I don't really need someone who's creative, because I think creativity can go in all sorts of different directions, right? Like creativity could be knitting. It could also be videography. Creativity is very sort of subjective to the person that it's attached to. So I don't really necessarily need you to be super crazy creative. I need you to understand how to make content that gets attention. And there is systems and, frameworks to that. So yeah, that curiosity is going to help breed creativity anyways. But in general, I need you to know how to make good content. That's what it comes down to.
Okay, I feel like right now the e-comm brand owners that are listening or watching this, they will know what to write in the next job description. You're writing
you gotta know how to make content. Yes. Yeah. Yep. It's all about that content.
But basically you nailed it. You need to have the kind of a performance background, because if you don't understand this, then what are you doing? And you also need to be creative, but that doesn't mean that you have to be a videographer. Necessarily. Exactly. It doesn't mean that you need to understand how to edit the video. You just need to understand what type of videos are working.
Yes.
What type of content is working.
Understand content. I think most of the really good creative strategists that I've worked with are addicted. And that sounds terrible, but they're addicted to the platforms. They just can't consume enough. It's really interesting for them to get in there and just see what's rising to the top creatively. And really, the best creative strategist I ever worked with could literally come up with videos off the top of his head. He was just in the moment. While we were filming, he was just like, oh, it would be fun if we just changed this over here. Maybe you came over here and said this phrase, or you come over here and pick this up and then drop it. Just that kind of level of problem solving on a very fast basis is rare. But if you can find someone like that, pay them whatever they want and keep them. Just keep them. Yeah.
Great. And you mentioned, and we talk about video so much. And I feel like we're starting to be obsessed with videos, and we feel like there's nothing else in the world. But something that I'm seeing from my agency is that in some cases, especially in some audiences, single images that are quite simple are working much better than any type of creative video. Mm-hmm. How do you see, and do you feel like there is still going to be a need for a little bit more simplistic single image ads compared to videos? And what's your take on this, videos versus single images?
I love statics. And I think the reason why I love them so much is they're very well attached to what our industry was originally born out of, which is the advertising industry, right? There used to be ad men. This is what the show Mad Men was entirely based on, is there used to be guys and women who their only job was just to create advertising that would boost sales. But you had no metrics on this, right? There was no way to even know how many sales you're going to get from it. There was no tracking on this. It was just, we got to check the numbers quarterly to see if that one worked, which was bonkers. But this particular crowd of people got really, really good at copywriting and at visual elements and at layout and design. They got so good at it that they could literally just push out whatever they felt was going to work this year or this quarter, and it would work. Like, just the level of skill on these people. So in today's day and age, we have very, very skilled copywriters, but the copywriters came, most of them at least, were trained in the era of marketing where we were heavily focused on sales pages, long form sales pages in particular. Yes. So they have a very specific skill set. They haven't retrained themselves yet to be able to generate headlines and subheads that are 4 to 7 words long that fit on an itty bitty little graphic that can get the same amount of sales. So I think statics are an underrated advertising form. I wish more brands would use them. The reason they usually don't is because we have not gotten to the point where we can get good results with them yet, because the people who are making them haven't been trained to do it yet.
Okay, I'm writing down an idea for my brand. Because of you.
Performance, man. Performance design and performance copywriting.
My brain is
predict.
Working like that all the time. I'm speaking with someone, and I'm like, wait
I gotta write that down.
I have an idea.
Wait, let me write
and
it
it
down.
has nothing to do with the conversation, but because of everything that
write
we
it
just
down.
mentioned,
I do the same thing.
And
I truly believe performance design and performance copywriting are going to be two of the next roles that pop up in the industry, because you're going to have that understanding of performance to be able to do it and do it well.
Where's copywriting going? That's something that you started to mention a little bit. And I used to be, not that I used to be a good copywriter, but one of my main skills as a marketer was to nail copies. And I still do from time to time. And I feel like this is quite underrated, to be honest, in the ad world. Because they feel like the copy is just a blank space where you just write random shit, honestly. Yeah. So,
100%.
how do you go about this, and what do you say to your clients in regards to their copywriting?
I love copywriters. Copywriters are probably the closest marketing professionals to psychology that I've ever found. Yeah. And that even goes for like graphic designers. Graphic designers are probably the second, I would say, that are closest to psychology as we can get it. The copywriters in particular, though, like I said, every single brand era, every single marketing era that we've been through, from, advertising to the brand era, into the .com boom, into like the e-commerce boom, like there's been specific times where the marketing era will roll over and new skills will come out of that. For copywriters, I think now is the time to understand your job is not necessarily short form versus long form. This is not the ADA framework anymore. Like, we're not going to be doing so much of this problem solution focused where it's structured, right? It still works. Just to caveat, that framework still works. However, the millennials and the Gen Zers are, I hate this term, but they're breaking the funnel. So they want something different from marketing these days. They don't want it to be what it was 10 years ago. They don't want brands to sell them anymore. They want to be a part of the brand before they purchase. So for copywriters, it's going to all come down to how well can you actually create emotion within people and honestly build inclusivity and community with what you're writing.
Okay. And I want to get you outside of the conversation that we're having at the moment, that is like right now, the needs of the business today in 2024 while we're recording this. I want to hear your opinion of the tendencies and be completely frank, what you're seeing and where you think that the advertising world or the digital advertising world is going to, with your boldest or boldest thoughts that you have. Okay. Where we're going, what's going to fuck up soon, what's going to start working, even if the chances are 5% or 10% of this happening.
I have a pretty spicy hot take that like people get really weirded out when I say it. I think the direct response era is dying. I don't think that we're gonna be direct response marketers anymore after this. I think we're headed straight into the participation era. And I think the majority of the marketers who are over here are probably not going to have their jobs in 5 to 10 years. unless they can upgrade their skill sets and learn how to participate.
Perfect.
Sorry in advance to everybody. I'm not trying to make you sad. Hopefully you can keep your job. But yeah, I think
We talked
direct
about it
response
in the
is dead.
beginning. We need to be
Yes.
bold. We need to be frank, direct, and all of this, and have the most honest conversation that you ever have on a podcast.
True. That's truly what I believe. I don't think direct response marketers are going to be very happy here.
Okay,
in a
but
little bit.
that's quite interesting. I'm gonna give you a potential objection here.
Okay.
The ads are becoming more and more expensive.
Yes.
It's becoming more expensive to educate people. And if 5 years ago I could have afforded to educate people, slowly, to start liking
Yeah.
my product, now I can really afford it. With a $20 CPM on Facebook, like I cannot afford to do all of this.
Yeah.
RM brand's gonna be even better at selling, doing direct response, compared to I'm gonna invest in education in one way or another.
I think most brands are going to get better at selling hard. I think they're gonna try and double down on their sales skills, which I think is the wrong way to go.
Okay.
Because millennials, Gen Zers don't want it. They do not want it. Now, you may not worry because you're like, I sell to boomers. If you want to stay in business 10, 15, 20 years from now, you're going to have to learn how to sell to millennials. It doesn't matter whether you want to sell to them now or not. So in general, yes, I think our skill sets will probably get more precise. We are going to start to pigeonhole ourselves down into the two things that we're really, really good at, which is usually sales and copy. And then we're going to wonder why we're not growing because we've never taken the time to understand how to build a relationship with somebody on the other side of a screen. And that's the skill set that's going to set the brands apart.
I want to take your words and like really mark them. How to build a relationship with someone on the other side of the screen. Like, whoever is listening to this, just mark this down. That's your number one goal as a digital marketer. And it's going to be like in the next 5 years. It might not be on Meta. It might not be on TikTok. It might be something completely new that we still don't know that it exists. But it is going to be this. Nice. What's your boldest prediction that you feel like nobody is talking about, but everyone is feeling that it's going there?
My boldest prediction for D2C? Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I feel like there's so many hot takes out here. I personally don't think that marketers are going to lean on Meta much anymore. Okay. Which is funny because the majority of them are actually hopping on the train again. They're like, Meta everything. It's working for us. Like, we're working on it now. Here we go. Mostly because
that's happening.
Yeah, everybody's hopping on the train, and that's why I think we're about to hit the end of Facebook. And nobody's going to like that. And I feel bad. But half the reason I think that is mostly because users are getting off of Facebook. It's not that like the brands don't want to get over there and get in on the action. The usership of Facebook is starting to slowly diminish. And the age, like the demographic of the person on there is starting to get old enough that they're not going to use it nearly as much as they used to. So you have to track both sides, consumers and brands, to know what's going to happen next. Yeah, I have a feeling we're just going to see more platforms pop up. You know, there's going to be another TikTok here in the next 10 years. Something's going to happen.
For sure there's going to be.
When is the question?
But I feel like there's no other advertising platform or no other platform came up with an advertising part of their platform that is really consistent.
Yeah,
and
truth.
Everyone hoped that TikTok was actually going to be the next thing. And honestly, it's just very inconsistent. Yep. Very little brands are actually making money off of TikTok ads for their D2C brands.
Yeah, well, it's because they don't know how to do content. No offense to anybody out there. It just,
there you go again. There you go again.
You have to understand how the platform actually works, and then you can do it. And I'm not even talking from like an algorithm standpoint. You just got to understand how people interact with content.
That's true. But honestly, in terms of sophistication, the paid algorithm on
I would
Facebook
agree with that.
Meta is much better than the one on TikTok.
Yeah.
TikTok is crazy great for organic.
Yeah.
And like
Facebook has also been around for how many years? Decades. TikTok is so baby new that they haven't figured it out yet, and they won't for probably another 10 years. And that's if if the U.S. doesn't
If these
decide
two
to
stay
just kick them
afloat,
out. So
Yeah.
there's lots of stuff happening.
Quite interesting. Okay, so you predict half of us are going to lose our jobs, maybe half of the world are going to lose business,
I'm so
and
That's not what I mean. Everybody's fine. You guys are fine. Don't worry. Everything is fine. People are going to come on here and be like, Sarah, geez, what did you do? I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry.
But that's true. If you don't really say it like this, nobody's gonna take you seriously, and they're just gonna continue doing the same thing. And honestly, after this conversation, even before we edit it and we post it online, I'm just gonna send it to every single person on my team in my agency so that they can watch this and learn from this. Because if you're not ready to innovate, and if you're not ready to experiment, and you're not ready to become a better version of you as a professional, then you don't really stand the chance. The train is moving with such a high speed that the brands cannot survive like that. Nobody can survive like that. And it's quite important to be very cautious for this. And always in our podcast, in the last section of it, we talk about a little bit more personal stuff that made you the person that you are right now, and or the people that you're getting inspired by. And you mentioned a specific group of people that are quite interesting. These are the people that are innovative, that are ready to experiment. Do you have those people that you're getting inspired by, that you're like, these are the people or brands that I personally constantly look for, not creative advice, but for inspiration?
Yes. I have like a whole list.
Go for it. Your top 5.
My top 5. Definitely the top one that I would say is probably Rory Sutherland. This guy I think he's chairman or vice president. I can't remember what he is for Ogilvy. I want to say he's in the EU though. I don't think he does stuff in the US anymore. Anyways, he travels all over and talks to everybody. But this guy is solidly into the behavior science of like brands and marketing and understanding how people actually make decisions. And the guy has just a very interesting way of thinking about humans. And so anything that he puts out, I follow. I'm like active on Twitter and active on like TikTok. Any like videos he has, I just binge them because he thinks about things from like a why do we do that as humans type of a way. So one of the most interesting like case studies he brought up was the fact that he had a supplement brand that was having like a very difficult time getting people to take all of their supplements, right? Because like people would buy the bottle, they'd only take half and then they wouldn't take any more. And so they'd churn. So he was like, really, it comes down to, you got to understand how humans actually process like decisions. So he's like, here's what you should do. You should literally just change the color of the pills, make 15 of them blue and 15 of them red, and then tell them for the first half of the month, take the blue ones, and for the second half of the month, take the red ones. He's like, the goal is so much shorter, and behaviorally, you're going to help. Yes, doesn't it? And I feel stupid next to this guy. I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And he's coming up with this stuff all the time. Just like random stuff like this that he's like, well, you should just do it this way because he understands how behavior works. So he is my like top go-to. Please just go binge everything that Rory Sutherland says because that guy's brilliant.
Okay. Do you need another 4, or you're like, he's filling the positions of the first 5?
He's filling all 4. The problem is I follow people that don't have like a lot of social presence because the majority of the people I follow are in behavior science. So they have their own ecosystems, but they don't post on social a lot because they're doing a lot of studies. Like they're just researching a ton. Will Leach is probably the second one on my list because just brilliant guy. He's been an economist for about 25 years. And he wrote the book Marketing to Mind States, which was like one of the best books I've ever read on how to apply emotion to advertising. So that one was like killer. Such a good book. So I recommend that to everybody. And then there's more, but I don't know. Those two kind of just, I constantly follow what they do.
Okay. What about the brands? If we go about brands.
Brands on D2C side, Liquid Death. I mean, we've talked about them this entire podcast, but I'm like, Liquid Death. Dollar Shave Club before they got sold. They were fantastic at what they were doing. And then gosh, third one on there, probably Obvi. Obvi's doing a really good job about testing a lot of this stuff. I think some of these brands are really, really good at one specific thing. Liquid Death is really good at market position. And Obvi, I think, is really, really good at these A/B tests. They're very much like into the science of we're going to test all these psychology-based things and behavior. And Obvi's doing a really good job there. From the big brands, I see almost none. There's not a lot of big
The
brands
people that are
nowadays.
innovating and the brands that are innovating are typically smaller. Like
Yeah,
that's
all
the
the small
place
guys.
where you see innovation, and then the big ones are just trying to replicate
Yeah.
whatever
The big
is staying
brands
on the market.
they're trying to do what we're doing over here. Yeah. I can't really think of any that are just crushing it. Yeah.
Okay.
Poor big brands. I'm sorry. I'm sure I'll find one.
And it's okay. And you you mentioned one of the books that you would recommend. What is something else that you're like, okay, you need to read this book. You need to do this if you want to be good at creative testing, psychology, etc.
I would go and listen to every episode from Phil Agnew's podcast, Nudge. The Nudge podcast is amazing. If you want to see real-time studies applied to actual marketing, like modern day marketing, that's the podcast that I would go after, because his stuff is great. I mean, he brings on some really, really solid people in the space, and then he applies it. Like, he's taking it to the brands that he works with. He actually like takes it to his own brand and tests these, these different research studies that are coming out. And he's just awesome. Like, Phil is cool. He's just a cool guy.
Great. Okay. That's fantastic. And who should be one of the next guests on the Two Ecomm Experts podcast? Someone that you're like, okay, people need to listen to this person more.
Oh my gosh. I mean, if you could get Rory Sutherland, I would get him because he's amazing. Somebody in the space that's doing similar things to myself, Caitlin Burgoyne. She's more of like modern, like mainstream marketing. She's not specifically in D2C, but she's really, really good at what she does. Very, very smart marketer. And she's got a pretty big following too. So she's one of those people that, like, if I ever am struggling to understand a concept, I'll go over and see what she's posting. And then I'm like, oh, that's Caitlin. Yeah, that makes sense. Otherwise, it is really hard to find somebody who's doing psychology in marketing. I didn't realize this, but it's kind of rare.
Even though that's basically our profession.
Yeah.
Like
It's the whole game, and it's like me and like two other people. And that's not to like say I'm amazing or anything. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn, but I'm just like, this is weird. Is there nobody else that does psychology and marketing? Like, there's got to be more. It's weird.
Sarah, where can people follow you? Where can they get inspired by you and what you're doing, and how can they reach out to you?
I'm pretty much everywhere these days, except for TikTok. I haven't really branched out there yet. But you can follow me at Sarah Levinger, SarahLevinger. Everywhere. Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm trying to get back on YouTube. It's very difficult because that takes a lot of time. Yeah. Otherwise, sarahlevinger.co is my website, and I have newsletters that you guys can learn more about psychology and how to apply it to advertising. Lots and lots of cool different places that I'm in, so...
Fantastic. Sarah, I think that we made an episode that's like, if it's not a blueprint, it's for sure something that everyone that's into creatives must listen to or must watch wherever they're doing this. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing your thoughts, sharing your knowledge with our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great. I loved it.
Thank you. And for everyone else, stay tuned for the next episodes of Two Ecomm Experts. You can follow us on YouTube or on any other social media platform that's available. We're everywhere. You know this. You understand this. I don't need to say the same things every single episode. Go ahead, follow us, share us. And if you know that there's someone that needs to watch or listen to Sarah's thoughts, definitely share it, because this is going to make the content viral, and that's important for us as well. So thanks everyone. Stay tuned.